lot of times you'll see me in front of the camera and I'm just being here in this space, quiet. I'm not thinking about anything. Kind of just empty, waiting. I'm not so much waiting for a thought to come in my head and then to say it. It's more like I'm waiting for an impulse to connect with you. But thinking, we're all really experts in thinking. We know a lot about it. We've all spent a lot of time doing it in so many different ways. And in this circle and the medicine of one, thinking is one of the biggest obstacles to peace. The peace that comes through compassion for yourself. What is thinking? What happens? When I'm sitting somewhere and having a dialogue in my mind, who's talking? And if I have two sides going on, having a conversation, who's talking? Are they different? Who's listening to them both? And in the question, who really am I in all this thinking? Who am I? If I think all the time, constantly, from morning to night, and maybe I have insomnia and think all night long too, that could be my experience of who I am. So I come to the circle and I just sit and I be quiet. And if a thought starts to emerge and roll out and forward, I just, rather than let my attention follow after it and chase it and think more, I just reestablish myself back to where the thinking begins. And then I just let myself be this spacious, compassionate circle to even my thinking. I don't try not to think. I see a butterfly. I didn't think that I saw a butterfly before I said that I saw it, though. So there's different kinds of mind activities that involve language. There's the thinking that goes on in our heads constantly. That's a conversation. And then there's the movement out of the mind that expresses in conversation, like I'm doing right now, that isn't sitting there spinning as thinking before it comes out of my mouth or your mouth. A lot of times it can be reactive to something. So what drives that kind of reactive thinking, it's almost like you're saying something and I want to jump in on it, and you're not letting me, and I want to jump in more. It's like something's driving that thinking that wants to come out. Just like when I'm having a conversation and I can't stop it in my mind, and a lot of it's about controlling and worrying, and it's driven. It's being driven by something inside of me. Usually some kind of emotional movement that through the process of thinking, I'm trying to think myself away from it. So there's a thinking that's trying to control the world and ourselves and our feelings. And it's trying to protect our sense of value, safety, and power. And usually when it's being driven, it needs to be right. Paradoxically, even when that thinking is a thought that's against ourselves. All the statements that can run in our head that disparage us. So, if thinking is the great obstacle, and thinking is really, perhaps in many ways, the source of suffering, not pain necessarily, because there's pain. There's pain. Life has pain. What do we do? If we know if we could stop thinking, we would have peace, but we can't stop thinking. What do we do? What do you do with all the thinking? How do you stop it? First, consider giving up believing in almost all of your thinking. And when I say believing, I mean when there's a tension and a need to be right and to believe that, and you believe it, and that belief is tense with all the feelings in that old story. And this is the thinking that runs through your head. There's a thought process that's part of a greater knowing that comes from an impulse within you that involves the awareness of the mind. It's like before thinking you have these impulses to move this way, move that way. It's through an awareness. It doesn't involve a constant vigilance of the environment that you've totally checked out and then you proceed. It's not driven. It emerges from your being and awareness peacefully, with clarity. And that's where you want to live from. But all this other thinking can be so noisy that it's impossible to live from it. So if most of our thinking is driven by these emotional charges inside of us, and we try to, if I want to stop thinking, but I can't, and we wrestle with it up here, if we can become this compassionate circle and sink into the movements that are driving it, the fear, the hurt, from which then the angry thinking can emerge. So if you're stuck in anger, you're stuck in control. And you have to come back to what you're really angry about. And the feeling that that is. So if you can be the circle first to your thinking, touch the energy that's driving it within you, be the circle to that, which is breath, relaxation, compassion. Let it move through you. All the thinking settles. And the other higher uses of the mind can emerge because they're not so noisy, they're not so loud. They're like movements that direct us and guide us. And that movement that emerges from our aware here-ness, it's much, much closer to who we really are. That awareness that's even there when we're yakking and talking in our heads and all these voices, and maybe somebody else is talking to us, but we are to be found in that which is listening to all of it. And that's you as a circle. So if you can ground yourself, and if you can just settle into that that's hearing it all, aware of it all, and let it have compassion just in its presence, and be that to all the noise and all the thinking. And to all the movements that drive the thinking. That's being the circle. That's self-love. That's the path to peace. By removing the true obstacles that generate all the thinking. So as I sit here quietly with my eyes closed, I'm not thinking. I'm pausing to see if there's another movement. I don't have to fill the space because I'm worried about being quiet and looking stupid. But if I were, I might talk too fast. I might try to fill all those spaces. And I would be coming more from that which was driving it. So, when you're having a conversation in your mind, and you're aware of it, you can hear it, and you can't stop it, but there's a feeling. First, you're listening to it, so the listener's there. It's as if just touch the listener. Listen to the listener, so to speak. Sink back into the listening. Don't wrestle with the voices. And then when you sink back into that, let that listening listen deeper, deeper into what's driving the motions, into the fear that can hide itself with anger. Don't worry about not thinking. Just give your attention to listening, which emerges from your just being here. And then when there are those moments when you can just sort of be completely here, without thinking. See how long you can stay there. See how long you can just be the circle, which is the medicine of one. And the medicine of one is the medicine for all your